Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researcher Celebrity. Today we have Mr. Ankith Sharma with us. Ankith is a PhD student at Texas A&M and he has done his bachelor's and integrated master's in biotechnology from Willow Institute of Technology. Ankith, welcome at the
Thank you.
platform.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we traditionally start our conversation that how and when you decided that you wanted to be a researcher.
So, well, for as long back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a researcher and then do some kind of research. And whenever I kind of think about why it was, I think it kind of started off with the idea that I have always kind of wanted to help people, make an impact in the society and make a difference. And when I was kind of thinking about how I want to kind of do that or bring that about, I kind of felt that being able to come up with new ways to treat people and new ways of medications. I thought that's where the actual bottleneck was. Because if something's available, then it's slightly easier to kind of help people than compared to when something's non-existent entirely.
True.
And that's when I kind of got into the actual process of research, and the whole process also kind of was helped by the fact that I had an uncle who was in the same field, who was in research. So kind of trying or looking at him and looking at what he does, I guess that also had an impact in me wanting to be a researcher in the future.
Sweet. So when was the first time when you actually thought that you wanted to be a researcher and then you will at some point of time do a PhD?
So I very clearly remember this. So when I was in my first PU, when I was kind of entering my first PU in the sense 11th equivalent in Karnataka. So they had an orientation session in my tuition classes wherein the students were asked to yell what their ambition was. And even at that point in time, I yelled that I wanted to be a scientist. So in my brain that it was pretty clear, even far back, as even 10th standard or 9th standard, that I wanted to be a scientist. It was pretty clear. So once you know that you want to be a scientist, then I guess PhD comes naturally. Right? I mean, you need to do a PhD to kind of be really involved in research, and I kind of knew that I would enjoy doing research. So I think PhD was a no-brainer once I realized that I wanted to do it.
Nice. So doing your bachelor's and master's in India, what make you think that you really want to do your PhD but outside of India, not in India?
So I think for me, I wanted to do PhD in a good lab, right? Even when I was in India and in Vellore, I looked at how research was done, and it had a lot of constraints in terms of everything, in terms of funding, in terms of procuring reagents, even manpower to a certain extent. So looking at that, obviously you want to do research in a better environment. So it's not that I applied only to the US, but even in India, I applied to good institutes which does good research. And it's just that opportunities are so vast when you look outside India that it's an obvious choice that you would want to apply to all the places possible and just maximize your chance of getting into a good lab and do a PhD. So I think it's looking at the possible options back home as well as just maximizing your chance of getting a PhD in a good lab. That I ended up doing my PhD in India. Sorry, PhD in the US, not in India, but in the US.
So here for all the audience, whosoever are thinking to do their PhD or considering or confused if they want to do a PhD in India or in abroad. So here we'll have this conversation to next level in the depth that what the constraints and how he came over. So Ankith, if you can share the journey of the application of the PhDs.
Sure. So I did an integrated master's, right? So that was 5 years long. So at the end of my 4th year, I pretty much had to. Actually, the planning started well before 4th year. So by the time you are at the end of your 4th year, it's good if you have prepared for your GRE, and if at least at that point in time, if you had prepared for your GRE and then taken your GRE exam, because it was required by all universities. I know now that it's not mandatory for all PhD programs. So it's something that people have to do their own research and kind of understand if the program that they want to apply to has that GRE requirement or not. But I can tell you what I did, which was, start preparing early on and then get ready to write the GRE test. And at the same time, there is also TOEFL, which is like the English language test that you need to take. And I think that is still required. So you need to practice for that and prepare, and then be ready to basically take that at the end of your 4th year, because you don't want to push too much until the end, because most of the applications close by December, like in your penultimate year or in your final year. So in your final year, it closes by the December if you're looking for a fall joining date. So you want to have everything set up and ready to go so that you can basically streamline the whole process. So I finished off my exams, and after that it was about choosing which universities that you want to apply to, and that you will again do based off of what your research experience is up until then, and also the score, the results that you get out of your exams, the entrance exams. And then you shortlist your universities, and then you go to the individual university, and then they'll have their own application. So there you need to fill out application, you need to also make your SOP, you need to have your letters of recommendation, you need to talk to your professors that you've done research under, whether they'll be able to give you a letter of recommendation, and then fill out the application. And you need to do that by the deadline, of course, which normally is December end or sometimes even January, depending on the university. And then you just wait for a callback. So even the callbacks vary. I know that certain departments just give you an offer directly. Some of them, they need an interview. So I know that for A&M they had an interview process, so there was a virtual interview since I was an international student. And then they basically take some time to review, because they have to wait for the interviews here to get over. And then they have a committee that sits down and selects the candidates, and then they send you the offer letter. Another thing that I want to stress is few universities require students to reach out to the professors beforehand. Because they ask in the application itself whether to list like their top candidates. So it's good if they have already talked to the professor and then asked if they're taking in students before actually submitting the application. But yeah, I mean, it's always better to do that. So maybe people should keep this in mind and actually do their due diligence in looking at the research that happens in the university, and try to kind of write the SOPs also, in a certain way, so that, like, you don't want to write like your SOP in cancer biology if there is no one in that university working on cancer biology, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So you need to do your research in that sense, and then just try and get in. So
that's absolutely true. So for all the viewers here, everyone, when they have this in mind that they want to do a PhD, especially when they are thinking out of India, so the first thing which everyone does is like sort the people or the principal investigators, PI, who are working in the area where this candidate is interested in. So first thing, go thoroughly, like their research, their publication, recent or past, so that you have a good grasp of the research scope of the lab, and then prepare your SOPs, as Ankith correctly mentioned. But even before that, it comes like when you are thinking about doing a research outside India, do you think that you really want to start with your PhD, or you think that if you are not 100% confirmed that you want to do a PhD, then I will suggest that you can apply for masters, because there is also a good amount of research involved in there once you figure everything out, because PhD is a commitment where there is no looking back and should not be. only commit yourself to PhD once you are 100% sure about it, and then once you commit, then there is no looking back. So Ankit, how was this in your case? Like, we all know that PhD is a roller coaster ride. That's how they explain. So you are in your fourth year. How it went till now, and what are the future? How do you see that?
So, yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster, right? Like, no matter how much you kind of get experience with research before PhD is a completely different ball game, because you don't have this kind of responsibility when you're just interning somewhere, right? So, I think for me, definitely it has been a roller coaster ride, because you go through so many different things. I can think of so many setbacks that I've faced, including COVID, which no one could have actually predicted. So you just need to take it positively, like you need to be in a good mindset. Say that it's fine. You'll just figure things out, and just one setback is not the end of the day. It's not the end of your PhD. You can always do something about it. There is always a new path or a new way that you can take to answer your question. And well, in the worst case scenario, you can always change the question. So it's all about trying and then working with your professor to kind of understand where you can go from the setback that you've just faced.
Cool.
So you just have to be really positive, and because if you start thinking why me, or why can't it go my way, it just spirals out of control. And I've actually seen people who just go down a negative path because they're not being positive. So you need to just not get frustrated. I mean, it's easy to say not get frustrated, but even if you do get frustrated, try to take some time off, and then try to calm yourself down, and then start back up again in a positive fashion. So I think that's very important. Being positive during a PhD is very important.
Absolutely. And this that being said, people always say that when you are registering yourself for a PhD, obviously you have to make your synopsis, a topic. Never marry that idea, okay? Because you, especially in cases of when you are working in biological systems with them, so they might not go the way you want. So you should be always flexible, that you have to have a plan. And as Ankith also mentioned, that you have to talk to your supervisor that, okay, if this thing doesn't work, then what are the options which we have? Because PhD is a training. It's mostly people say that as an academic degree. Yes, it is, but it is about the training for lifetime. It trains you for the lifetime. And we would like to ask Ankith, how you go through all these. As you said, not getting frustrated is easier than said done. So but when it comes, what are your ways to come out?
So one thing is, if let's say at the end of the day I'm very frustrated, then first thing I do is go home. Right, you can't do much when you're really frustrated. So you go home, you kind of relax, and it depends on what relaxes you. Maybe like watch a movie, or sometimes just sleep, or go out and do what you like. And just try to enjoy what you're doing at that point in time, not trying to think about your lab or your future or anything. Just relax as much as possible. And I mean, if it's like, if you're like at the end point, if it's unbearable, like the frustration is unbearable, you might also want to think about taking some time off work. I might take like a couple of days off, or take a weekend off, take a week off sometimes as well. And just, if you want, you can even travel to some other place, just enjoy the moment, and then I'm sure that it'll get better. I'm sure it'll get better. It has happened to me as well, wherein frustration, and more so I think you experience burnouts pretty regularly after an intense period of time wherein you're working for a deadline. You do get burned out. So at times when that happens, I just take some time off, take a weekend off, go visit my friends, just enjoy the time there, and you just feel energized. You come back, and then you can put in the same amount of work. So working through burnout doesn't make sense. You have to do something about it. Especially after the deadline is done, and then just recharge, and then tackle the same problem again.
True.
So that's definitely something that people should do is what I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing just Ankit mentioned, that working through burnout doesn't work, and I can say this on behalf of so many researchers that that is true. Once you realize that you are burnout, take your time off. Do whatever makes you happy, be it, chilling out with friends or with family, because we as in human being also need to our own resets. Like, it is easy to restart your computer when it is hang, okay, very easy, but for humans it is a bit tough. So someone can feel that, okay, there are certain things which makes me happy, obviously go for it. Someone says like, no, I'll just take a nap and then I'm fine. Sure, why not? But you have to understand that there is a limitation for brain also. It does need its own time to rejuvenate in a way. And then, as Ankit also mentioned about going out to friends and spending time with there and then coming again back, because the research question stands there, okay, you are the only one who's moving in and around it, and once it's sorted, then Ankit, how, so did you do any research in India?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How was that different? Because here most of our audience is in India, and some of them easily want to move out of it. So what were the significant differences which you have realized there and here?
Lots, lots of differences. So to be honest with you, since I knew that I would want to do a PhD, I started working in labs very early on. Like as soon as I joined VIT, I started looking at different labs and then tried to work in different labs in VIT, and also did internships at different labs in India, different research institutes in India. And I think one thing that's common in VIT and across different research institutes as well was the funding issue. So so the funding in terms of money for the PhD student, as including like all the research fellows or people actually pursuing PhD, as well as funding for the project in itself. So I saw that professors had acquired funding through like DBT or whatever institute, and they hadn't received funding, like actual money from them for up to 2 years. Like that doesn't make sense in the first place, right? So like you have a plan which is good, which has been approved by your peers, but then even after 2 years you don't have the money to actually do or pursue a project. And that puts a strain on the lab in itself, because okay, what do you do when you don't have the money? And even the university can do only so much to support you, right?
Yes.
So that's one of the things that I was actually surprised by when I heard about it. And the other one is just which affects the student directly, which is the stipends that that you get. Even that's very regular. So here, if first is on a Sunday, then you get a paycheck the last weekday. Because they are so punctual about paying the students. But there you don't know if you're going to get a paycheck this month or not.
True.
Because it's so badly, I'm sorry to say this, but it's very badly maintained. And I'm just surprised that no one has actually done anything about this. People actually need to ask questions as to why it's not more streamlined, and then make more effort towards making people's lives easier, because they are already in such strenuous conditions, working so many hours, and then on top of that you need to figure out how you're actually going to make a living or live the next month, because you don't have money. So those two things were definitely very surprising. And even apart from funding, like even when you have to get basic things like order primers, right, it takes so many days. At least when I was working there, in 2018 is what I can speak about. I don't know about what's happening now, but it used to take so much time. So I was at a premier research institute there. I was at INSTEM, which is at the NCBS campus, wherein even to order primers you have to undergo so much of administrative things, and once it's ordered it takes so much time for the primers to arrive. So you need to plan at least like a month ahead if you want to do some cloning. And cloning is like it's just a basic thing to start off a project, and here you get it in 2 days. So like all these differences just makes it really hard to do actual research. I don't want to say actual research, but then to do
Your
good
experiments.
research.
To perform your experiments
Yeah.
from thinking to performing.
Yeah,
That's
to be 100% efficient in your
Mhm.
research, I mean, it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So, definitely looking at those things, I was like, okay, maybe at least for PhD, I want to be at a place wherein I can have, a bit more breathing space and then have a better experience of doing research,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I kind of apply to a lot of places abroad. And I'm sure people even in India recognize that these are the problems.
True.
And that's why they do try to apply to other places, but it's just that they're not aware of the process that's involved, or the process it's also it requires money.
Yes.
Let's be honest, because applications also need money. It's not easy for everyone to afford, because each application here costs a certain amount of money that you need to pay, and even the tests need a certain amount of money. So I understand the difficulties as well, but yeah, it's just I really want the situation in India to improve. I really think that they can do better.
Absolutely.
It's just about the right people voicing their opinions.
No, there are so many things which have been changed since 2018, and now also there are student associations which are working towards this regular. But yeah, it will take some more time when these things regularize, because everyone knows that they have their own crunches, either family responsibilities, which I believe that all the audience can agree with me. Okay, so this was about the basic difference in the research. How about the difference in the culture when you move out from India? That's the place where you just call home, and when you are out here, either it be with the visa issues or it be like feeling homesick. How was that experience?
It's completely different. I can tell you that. But what very slightly helped me was the fact that I was not at home even after my 12th standard. Like, I moved to Vellore from Bangalore, so I was kind of used to living away from home and trying to fend for myself in a sense in terms of food and things like that. So I was already used to somehow surviving. So in that sense, I was okayish, but there is a lot of differences in terms of even as basic as speaking to people. Even the vocabulary is slightly different. So there are so many instances wherein you're like, I wonder what the Americans actually use, the term Americans use, because they don't understand what you're saying.
Yes.
So there is a culture shock in that sense, but you do get used to it. When it's happening, you're probably stressed, but then looking back, you laugh at what happened.
True.
But it's fun when you think about those instances. And apart from that, of course, I mean, in the US, Indian food, again, depends on where you are at. You don't really get it available everywhere, and even it's on the pricier side, so you need to learn how to cook, which again is another thing that a lot of them don't really learn when they're in India. Me being one of them, I agree. But you do learn slowly. So you learn how to cook, at least enough for you to kind of live every day, because you can't afford to eat outside every meal. So yeah, so culture shock, and then the food differences, and even in lab, the way kind of people interact with each other, and then the culture around work, it's also very different. So yeah, you just get used to it. So yeah, you will get used to it. So don't stress too much about all these things when you're trying to apply.
Okay.
Because people have done it before, and you can figure it out once you come here. And the visa issue is definitely strenuous. I think now it's getting easier. Not easier in the sense the slots are getting easier to, I think, register, because I heard during COVID it was very messed up.
Bad. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, even the visa is strenuous, but there are a lot of resources that are available, so go through them. If you're applying for TAMO, I know that the Indian Graduate Student Association, they have a lot of resources online on their website. You can also reach out to the mentoring team here if you need any help. So I'm sure like all universities have these kind of associations which kind of give you information about what needs to be done, and you can reach out to them if you have any issues once you get your admit into the university. So yeah, it's about going through different resources online and then trying to help yourself out.
No, that was very important. So that I believe that all the audience and viewers should keep this note that whenever you are applying for a university and look for all these associations, either it be Indian student or other student associations, go and talk to them. And this brings us to another question, that when you are choosing a lab, did you, like for your in your case, do you already contact the professor or the student to have an idea about the environment in the lab, because this is also very crucial?
Yes, definitely. So I contacted the professors about the research and the positions that are open in the lab, but I didn't inquire it with any student. And I wasn't, maybe I should have done it, but it wasn't 100% necessary for me because my program has rotations, laboratory rotations. And what you can do through laboratory rotations is you need to rotate in 3 different labs before you choose the lab that you want to work in. So I spent, I don't remember the exact time, but around 2 months in 2 different labs, trying to, which gave me basically time to understand how my professor works, how the lab works, how the people in the lab actually are, and I didn't have to make a commitment right from India.
Okay.
I didn't have to say, I'm going to work in that lab. So that was actually important for me because I wanted to understand how the professor is, and that is actually very important, right? If your professor is a nice guy, if he understands you, if he understands how research works, it becomes much easier.
Absolutely.
So that was always there in the back of my head, that I actually wanted to understand how the PI works and like his expectations before I made a commitment.
True.
So this rotations actually helped in that sense. But I know that a lot of programs here, especially in engineering, you don't have a lot of options to rotate. Like there is no concept of laboratory rotations. So that in that case it becomes very difficult to gauge, and maybe during those times, as you suggested, reaching out to like a lab person and asking how their experience has been will actually help you decide if you want to like join that lab or not.
True. So this comes to the bullet points. Okay, the first thing which you have to understand, that you are interested in a question, so that is your research focus, which is already there and very clear to you. Second is the expertise of the PI in that field. You say that, okay, this is the person who has enough experience and I'm ready to do PhD with the person. Third is the lab environment, because even if you have a very good understanding with the PI, the environment in the lab is so important, because sometimes, and this is not only for biological fields, doesn't matter in what field you are doing your PhD, sometimes you spend more than 8 to 10 hours in there, which takes out more than half of the time when you are awake, because if you are going home sleeping for 8-10 hours, then more than half is gone. So you have to understand that the time which you are spending with the people, with keeping your mindset, the mental health. Now we will talk about the importance or role of mental health in a PhD. So Ankith, because in here at Texas A&M, you might have different helping associations where you can go and group join, but when it comes to a person who is an introvert, who is not ready to open and share these things, how that person can get help?
So there are a few things. One is obviously like counseling in itself. So here at A&M we have CAPS, which stands for Counseling and Psychological Services, I think it stands for, wherein they are open to talking to people. If any student has anything concerning that or bothering them, they can go to this CAPS directly. They can book an appointment online. They can go. There is a trained advisor there who will talk to you about the problems that you're facing. So if you're an introvert and if you don't like sharing these things with your friends or with your professor or with your family back home because you think they might get stressed, you can just go to this gaps and then talk to the advisor about it. And they are actually good at basically helping you kind of resolving the issue. And if there is something that they can do from their side, I think they try to help you as well. So that's definitely one of the things that Texas A&M here is good about, and they also send out regular emails reminding people that there is this service that's available. So that's definitely one of the things. And the other one is, well, if you're an introvert and don't like talking to people, then maybe try resolving it by yourself, which is very hard, is what I feel.
True.
But if you have no other option, then I guess you have to read self-help books.
Yes.
Or I'm sure there are resources online where people doing PhD themselves share their stories and their journeys. So that also helps, wherein you're reading, some incident a PhD student went through, and then you read that, and you're like, okay, I'm going through the same thing. So you're like, okay, maybe I'm not alone in experiencing this.
True.
So that helps as well. So I have done a few of those. I've also read books written by PhD students who have dropped out because they couldn't continue their PhD because of various reasons. So reading those basically gives you perspectives as to what happened, and you can always take things from their journey and basically use it for your own.
True. That brings us to a question that when a person is going through stress of the experiment as a PhD student, the first thing which they should do, and everyone suggests this, that go and talk to your PI. Okay, you can try this, might not help. In major cases, it's the thing resolved there only. Second is talking to your friends. This is very important because it's not just about PhD. Stress is integral part of human life. It is there, like, no matter you are doing a degree or not. So you have to have your support pillars, which can be friends, family, and they are these are the two well-known supporting systems which exist apart from ICUs. And I don't think, or I don't assume that anyone should go to ICU, because they are the best support systems which can resolve most of your stress and help you in that. As Ankith also mentioned, if nowadays social media is full of so much of information, if you're going through something, just look for it and you might get your answer in there. The point here which needs to be addressed is there are hurdles and you have to get over it. There should be nothing which stops your journey. And part of researcher celebrity conversation is this only, that it should not stop you, because the day when you committed that you really want to do a PhD or you wanted to be a researcher, the day you assumed that there is nothing in the world which can stop you, and now if you are saying that there are some things, certain people, behavior which can stop you, that means you are giving your system support in their hand, and then you're like, okay, they are the boss, which should not be the case. Ankith, now after spending 4 years at Texas A&M, how do you see yourself in future? That what are the goals which you want to achieve, or summing up the PhD experience, how was that at Texas A&M?
It's been actually really fruitful. You know, when I came into my PhD, started my PhD, it was about doing research here and then getting that PhD degree. But then slowly you kind of have time to kind of think about other things as to what you want to do after PhD, and that has actually helped me, or doing PhD has also kind of helped me develop other interests, which I don't know how it happened, but I've diversified my interests, and then I know now that there are different things in life that I can pursue and then be successful at, because PhD kind of gives you that toolbox to kind of understand things and then be successful at something. So looking at the future, professionally speaking, it definitely boils down to like what I want to do or what I enjoy doing, which still is research and development. So I do want to be involved in research and development, and in what capacity is kind of open at this point in time. I'm open to it being in an industrial setting or in an academic setting. So in academia, it comes down to doing a postdoc, and industry, they have like postdoc positions as well. That maybe like people not aware of this, but you can do a postdoc in an industry, or you can just get a direct position in an industry. So as of now, I've kind of kept them open, and then I'll basically see what comes out of it when I actually apply, and then yeah, get to the end of my PhD.
No, that is very important. Keeping the options open should be everyone's way they want to live their life. Because the moment you shut down on something, you are not only losing on that part, but you are stressing yourself to succeed in some way, and you are forcing yourself to do the things you might not enjoy after some time. And this is not from one person, it is from the conversations which we have at research celebrities at different stages of their career. Some of the most successful scientists were not aware that they want to be there in their initial stages. They were like, okay, the opportunity came, we grabbed it, and that's the reason how where we are today, wherever we are. So always try to keep the options open. That is the first thing. Second thing is always keep your heart also open. Like everyone knows that PhD students keep their brains open, but heart is also something which needs to be open, that you have to talk, either it is to your supervisor or to your friends or to the family. Stress will come out absolutely, because with stress you cannot sustain for long. That is one of the things which is very important. And at researcher celebrities, when we do these conversations, today we have Ankith as a PhD student, yesterday we had some other one, tomorrow we'll have others. So we want to give you this entire perspective that how it feels to be a researcher when they are doing their PhD, when they are doing their postdoc, they are in industry or in academia, so that you can have an idea about it. But the fact is, you will walk your own path. So you can have them heard, their ideas, their thoughts and views, but your own experience will be a different one, and that is how you have to build it on. Ankith, now when you are sure, you always wanted to be a researcher, you are enjoying the life, and you already see it that you always wanted to be a researcher forever. When you see your peers who are not in research, because this is one thing which is very strong in India, and even in United States people do talk about it, that researcher don't get paid high enough with their counterparts. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, I mean, I've just accepted that fact, you know, to be honest. I've never really been angry at it or anything, because that's just how it is. Well, I've tried to reason with it though, like I have asked why that is, and maybe one question that comes to my mind is, at least in my field I can say that there is a lot of expenses when compared to a computer engineer. I don't know, so maybe because of that they you get paid less because they're also paying for consumables and whatnot, whereas for a computer engineer it's maybe not so much.
That's a good way to think, yes.
So maybe that's that, or maybe I'm just being very naive, I don't know, but that definitely does exist. But I guess here, if you get into an industry, at least a good industry does pay you enough to lead a good life. But again, academia, it's even here in academia, if you're doing like a postdoc and if you're living in an expensive city like New York or San Francisco, it does get really difficult. Like leading a life, especially if you have a family and kids, it's near impossible to lead a life being a postdoc. So I mean there have been a lot of talks about this
Mhm.
here as well, wherein they're trying to increase
Mm-hmm.
the pay for postdocs. I'm
Mhm.
sure even in India it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's something that academicians in general experience. Um, maybe one way to counter this would be to get in public support. I know
Mhm.
maybe ask public funding so that people can be paid more and things like that. But it's something that the governments and the institutes need to explore more.
Absolutely. No, here I would like to say now we are towards the edge of our conversation. So to all the researchers, stay tuned, okay, for the researcher celebrity conversations. Take the thoughts what you want from the conversation, build it up, okay. You have a long way to go, and research never gives up on anyone. That is for sure. Even if you are ready to give up on research, research will never give up on you. And that's the reason why we always say once a researcher, always a researcher. And with this quote, we'll say thanks, Ankith,
Thank
for
you.
taking time out and sharing your experience journey.
Thank you.
And for all the audience, if you want to contact with specific questions to Ankith, you can write directly to Ankith, or you can directly write to Empowering Science Foundation, because we do believe in breaking the barriers, and researcher celebrities is one of that step which we are ready to take, already walking almost a year now, more than a year actually. So with this, thank you everyone and stay tuned.
Thank you.